In the early autumn of 1873, the small settlement of Frostvale Ridge lay quiet beneath a thin layer of frost. 21-year-old Elara Winters stepped out of the modest cabin she called home, adjusting her woolen shawl against the crisp morning air. Her stepfather, Conrad Hale, had made it clear the night before she had 3 weeks to leave the property. $15 in her hand, the future uncertain, Elara felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her shoulders. She wasn't just leaving a roof over her head, she was leaving a life of survival skills and wisdom inherited from her father, Elias Winters, the forestry worker who had raised her with knowledge of the forest, timber, and the hidden science of wood. Elara's father had been a man of extraordinary understanding. Not just any man who chopped wood for a living. Elias Winters knew trees as deeply as some men know horses or weather. He understood their seasons, the weight of their moisture, and the way they could give warmth if treated correctly. When Elara was 18, he had succumbed to a lingering illness, leaving her with a wealth of knowledge and an empty cabin. Losing him had been like losing the ground beneath her feet, yet his teachings lingered, clear and unyielding. Conrad Hale was practical rather than cruel, a former lumber camp worker who needed a wife and had taken Elara's mother after her first husband's death. To Elara, Conrad had been an obstacle, a calculating presence who saw her existence as an additional mouth to feed. By the time he asked her to leave, he had calculated that the coming winter would cost him more than he could bear. He handed her $15, a pittance for the years of labor she had contributed, cooking, cleaning, tending a small vegetable patch, hauling wood. Without argument, she accepted it. Arguing with Conrad was pointless. Her father had taught her the wisdom of using energy only for battles you could win. But Elara was not without resources. She remembered a lesson her father had taught her many winters ago, a secret hidden among the mundane details of timber work. Freshly cut wood is wet, dangerously wet, and burns inefficiently. A pound of green timber produced only half the heat of properly dried wood. Her father had described a method used in their homeland, a hillside tunnel, carefully dug and ventilated, where green wood could be dried in a fraction of the time it would take outdoors, safe from frost and rain. In Frostvale Ridge, the winters were brutal, the frost unforgiving. Most settlers cut enormous amounts of wood, stacking it outdoors, only to watch it partially rot or burn inefficiently. Elara's memory of her father's sketch on a scrap of paper now became her blueprint. A few miles from the settlement, she found her claim, 5 acres on the side of a glacial ridge. The soil was poor, the slope made farming impossible, and the land worthless to anyone else. But for Elara, it was perfect. She staked her claim and began preparing the ground. Using $8 of her 15, she built a modest one-room cabin at the base of the ridge, a functional but crude structure with a simple fireplace. The real work, however, would be hidden behind her cabin, inside the hillside itself. Elara spent several days surveying the slope, measuring the angle, and choosing the precise location for the tunnel. Her father had been meticulous in his instructions. The slope needed to drive natural airflow. The tunnel's entrance needed to catch the warmth of the sun without being exposed to direct gusts that could disrupt the drying process. She chose a section running roughly north to south, the lower entrance facing the southern sun, the upper vent shaded and cooler. This temperature difference would drive airflow naturally, with no mechanical assistance. By early October, she began excavation. Digging horizontally into the hillside was grueling work. The Minnesota glacial soil was a mixture of clay, sand, gravel, and occasional boulders left by glaciers centuries before. Every spadeful weighed her down, but her resolve was heavier. She worked from dawn to dusk, shaping the tunnel as she went. Its cross-section was carefully formed into a narrow oval, wide enough for her to stand at the center, crawl along the edges, and move logs easily. Timber planks lined the walls, supported by notched crossbeams, while the ceiling was reinforced with heavy beams packed with clay to keep moisture out while insulating the space below. 3 weeks passed in relentless labor. By late October, the tunnel was complete, 18 feet into the hillside, perfectly vented. Elara tested the airflow with a small smoke fire at the entrance, watching how the currents moved gently yet steadily from the southern opening to the upper vent. The system was alive, working exactly as her father described decades earlier. Next came the logs. Freshly cut pine, heavy with sap, were rolled down the ridge and carefully stacked on timber racks inside the tunnel. She left space between logs for air circulation, arranging them to maximize drying efficiency. The first few weeks, the change was imperceptible. The logs remained heavy and wet to the touch. Yet, slowly, the air carried moisture away, layer by layer, as the constant underground temperature preserved the timber's integrity. As November turned into December, the first real cold set in. Her neighbors struggled. Wet wood sputtered in their fireplaces, producing smoke but little heat. Children huddled in blankets, frost creeping into their homes. Meanwhile, the small cabin of Elara Winters glowed steadily with warm, dry air. Each log she drew from the tunnel burned efficiently, producing more heat than 3 green logs from her neighbors' piles. Word of her success spread quickly. Elsa Brandt, a sharp-tongued woman who ran the general store with her husband Hinrich, arrived with a delegation to see the miracle themselves. They found the cabin warm, the fireplace glowing, yet no woodpile visible outside. Confused, they followed Elara to the hillside tunnel. Inside, the sight was astonishing. Rows upon rows of golden timber, fully seasoned, ready to burn. "What sorcery is this?" Elsa asked quietly. "No magic," she replied with a smile. "Just the slope, airflow, and time. My father taught me. I applied it. The hillside does the work." The winter intensified. Blizzard winds howled through Frostvale Ridge, temperatures dropping below -25 degrees. Neighbors burned every last scrap of green wood, shivering, desperate. Meanwhile, Elara's cabin remained warm, every log in her tunnel producing maximum heat. Families began trekking through the snow to collect logs, each amazed at the difference. 1 cord of her seasoned timber replaced 2 cords of their green wood. By the end of the blizzard, a dozen families owed their survival to Elara Winters. The young woman, expelled with $15, had not only survived, but transformed the way her entire community viewed timber, warmth, and engineering. She shared her knowledge freely, teaching others to build similar hillside tunnels. By spring, 3 more tunnels dotted the ridges surrounding Frostvale Ridge, all producing perfectly seasoned wood in 6 weeks. Elara remained on her land for 7 years. The original tunnel continued functioning flawlessly, a testament to foresight, persistence, and the wisdom passed from father to daughter. 81 winters later, her legacy was documented in the annals of Frostvale Ridge. The young woman, with nothing but knowledge and determination, had saved lives, preserved energy, and turned an ordinary hillside into a beacon of survival science. The lesson endured. Sometimes the person with no visible advantage knows more about survival than even the experts, and the wisdom of one generation, carefully preserved, can illuminate the path for the next.